The weight of the choice pressed down on the three council officers like a physical force. Everything they had believed about their civilization, their mission, and their place in the galaxy had been systematically dismantled over the course of a single day. Now they sat in a human command facility, surrounded by technology that shouldn't exist, facing a decision that would determine the fate of both species. Lyranis looked at her companions, seeing her own turmoil reflected in their expressions. Tilana's cranium was pulsing erratically as her analytical mind struggled to process contradictory information. Kesara's scales had settled into a pattern that indicated deep emotional conflict, the warrior's instinct to fight warring with the growing realization that everything she had been trained to fight for might be wrong. "You're asking us to betray our own species," Lyranis said quietly. "No," Dr. Harrison replied. "We're asking you to save it." Secretary Chen activated one final display, this one showing the current state of council space. Red markers indicated systems under increasing surveillance. Yellow showed planets being prepared for resource extraction, and blue marked the locations of council elimination fleets. "The final assessment protocol isn't just about humanity," Chen explained. "It's part of a larger initiative. The council has identified 17 species as potential threats. The plan is to eliminate or subjugate all of them within the next decade. The scope of the planned genocide was breathtaking. Billions of sentient beings across multiple star systems, all marked for death or slavery, because they had developed too quickly or refused to submit to council authority. Among them," General Rodriguez added, "are the homeworlds of several species currently serving in the council military." Kesara's scales shifted to shocked white. "They're planning to eliminate their own people?" "Not their own," Harrison corrected gently. "That's the point. Council leadership has never considered non-human species to be equals. They're tools, resources to be used and discarded when convenient." Tylana's cranium suddenly blazed with activity as her analytical mind reached a terrible conclusion. The integration protocols. They're not designed to help species join galactic civilization. They're designed to make them dependent. "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "Technology transfers that create reliance on council systems. Cultural exchanges that gradually replace native traditions with council values. Economic partnerships that strip worlds of their resources while providing just enough benefit to prevent rebellion." The three aliens were beginning to understand the true horror of what they had been part of. Every successful first contact mission, every species they had helped integrate into galactic society, had actually been a carefully orchestrated conquest. "How long have you known?" Lyranis asked. "We suspected from the beginning," Rodriguez replied. "When you've spent centuries fighting each other, you develop good instincts for recognizing predators. The council's behavior patterns were too familiar. But we didn't have proof until we started intercepting communications," Harrison added. "Once we had access to classified databases, the picture became clear. The humans had spent decades gathering evidence of council crimes, building a comprehensive case against the galactic government. They had names, dates, locations, and detailed records of every illegal operation conducted under the banner of galactic peace. What we're offering," Chen continued, "is a chance to stop it before it goes any further. But we can't do it alone. We need people inside the council structure, people who can influence decisions and provide intelligence." "People like us," Kesara said. "People exactly like you," Harrison confirmed. "Talented officers with access to classified information and the ability to operate throughout council space without suspicion." The offer was as terrifying as it was tempting. Join a resistance movement against the most powerful organization in the galaxy. Risk everything they had ever known. Betray their oaths and their training, all for the chance to save civilizations they had never heard of from a fate they were only beginning to understand. "What happens if we refuse?" Tilana asked. "Then you return to your ship," Chen replied honestly. "You file whatever report you think best serves your conscience, and we prepare for war." "You would really fight the entire council?" Lyranis asked. "We've been preparing for that possibility for 50 years, Rodriguez answered. "We'd prefer not to, and war is wasteful and destructive. But if the choice is between freedom and extinction, humans have never chosen extinction." The display showed the full scope of human preparations: hidden fleets, secret bases, defensive installations, and weapons that bent the laws of physics. But it also showed something else: the massive cost such a war would exact on both sides. Even if you won, Kesara pointed out, the galaxy would be in chaos. Billions would die. Yes, Harrison acknowledged sadly, which is why we hope it won't come to that. Change from within is always preferable to revolution from without. The humans were offering them a third option, not submission to council authority or destructive war, but careful, systematic reform. Working from inside the system to expose corruption, protect threatened species, and gradually transform the galaxy's power structure. You've thought this through very carefully, Tilana observed. We've had a lot of time, Chen replied, and we've learned from history. Revolutions that try to change too much too quickly usually create more problems than they solve. What would you want us to do? Lyranus asked. Initially very little, Rodriguez explained. Continue your normal duties, but keep us informed about council operations that might threaten innocent species. Help us identify other potential recruits, people who might be sympathetic to our cause. Over time, Harrison added, you could help us document council crimes for eventual public exposure. The goal is to reach a point where the evidence becomes undeniable, forcing political change. It was a long-term strategy that would require patience, careful planning, and enormous personal risk, but it was also the only plan that offered hope for meaningful change without catastrophic violence. And if we're discovered? Kesara asked. Then you'll be branded traitors and face elimination, Chen answered honestly. We won't lie to you about the risks. What we're asking is dangerous, possibly suicidal. But, Harrison continued, it's also the right thing to do, and sometimes that's reason enough. The three aliens sat in silence for long minutes, each wrestling with their own thoughts and fears. Everything they had been taught about duty, loyalty, and service was being challenged by what they had learned about their government's true nature. Finally, Lyranus spoke. If we agree to this, if we join your resistance, what guarantee do we have that you won't simply replace the council with human rule? None, Chen admitted. You'll have to trust that our actions over the past 50 years demonstrate our intentions. We could have revealed ourselves at any time, could have used our technological advantages to conquer rather than liberate. Instead, we've chosen to remain hidden, to work toward change rather than dominance. The goal isn't human supremacy, Rodriguez added. It's genuine cooperation between equals. A galaxy where species can develop according to their own nature without fear of elimination or absorption. Tilana's cranium pulsed thoughtfully. Your success would create a dangerous precedent. Other species might decide they don't need council protection either. We hope so, Harrison smiled. That's rather the point. The transformation they were proposing wasn't just about saving threatened species. It was about fundamentally changing the galaxy's power structure, moving from a system based on domination and control to one based on mutual respect and cooperation. We need time to think, Lyranus said finally. Of course, Chen agreed. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Take all the time you need. But remember, Rodriguez added quietly, while you're deciding, the final assessment protocol is still moving forward. Every day of delay means more species moving closer to elimination. The choice before them was clear, if not easy. Maintain their loyalty to a corrupt system and become complicit in genocide, or risk everything to fight for a better future. Join the resistance and help expose the truth, or return to their ship and pretend they had never learned what they now knew. As they prepared to leave the facility, Harrison offered them one final thought. Whatever you decide, remember this. The galaxy doesn't have to be the way it is. Power structures that seem permanent can be changed by people willing to sacrifice for what's right. The question, Chen concluded, is what kind of galaxy you want to help create. The three council officers walked back toward their shuttle in silence, each carrying the weight of a decision that would echo across the stars. Behind them, humanity waited with patient determination, ready to fight for freedom or die trying. The universe was about to discover that when it came to protecting what they believed in, humans had never learned how to surrender. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Dr. Harrison's gentle tone made the implications even more terrifying. Tilana's analytical mind raced through historical databases, searching for any mention of previous contact with humanity. The search came back empty, but now she understood why. You've been editing our records, she whispered. Not editing, Secretary Chen corrected. Redirecting attention. It's surprisingly easy to make people not see what they're not expecting to find. General Rodriguez activated another series of displays, these showing dates and locations that should have been familiar to any council officer. The Beacon Station Incident, 2847 Galactic Standard, the disappearance of Survey Fleet Delta 7, the mysterious system failures that plagued sector control for 3 months in 2851. Kesara's warrior instincts were screaming warnings as recognition dawned. Those weren't accidents. No, Harrison confirmed. They were field tests. We needed to understand Council capabilities firsthand, so we arranged some controlled encounters. The scope of human infiltration was becoming clear. For decades, they had been probing Council defenses, studying their technology, and learning their procedures. Every mysterious incident, every unexplained malfunction, every bit of missing data had been part of a comprehensive intelligence operation. Beacon Station was our first real test, Chen explained. A isolated monitoring post with minimal crew. We needed to see how quickly the Council would respond to a distress signal, what kind of force they would send, and how they would investigate the aftermath. Lyranis remembered the incident from her academy studies. A routine monitoring station had gone silent for 6 hours before coming back online. The crew reported system malfunctions and memory gaps, but medical scans showed no signs of outside interference. The incident had been classified as equipment failure. You were there, she realized. You took that station. Briefly, Rodriguez nodded. Long enough to download their databases and conduct some biological studies. Your people never even knew they had been unconscious. Biological studies? Kesara's scales were shifting to aggressive patterns. Nothing harmful, Harrison assured her quickly. We needed to understand Council physiology, psychology, and neural patterns. How else could we develop countermeasures? For your various species' advantages? The revelation was staggering. Humans had been kidnapping Council personnel for scientific study, then returning them with no memory of the encounter. It explained so many unexplained incidents over the years. Survey Fleet Delta 7 was more ambitious, Chen continued. An entire exploration fleet, 12 ships, 300 crew members. We needed to test our capabilities against a larger force. Tylana accessed her historical files. Delta 7 had been investigating reports of unusual energy signatures in an empty system. They had found nothing and returned to base. But their mission. Logs showed several hours of missing time that had never been explained. You captured an entire fleet? Lyranis asked in horror. Disabled and studied, Rodriguez corrected, then sent them home with adjusted memories and falsified sensor logs. As far as they knew, they had conducted a routine survey of an empty system. But how? Kesara demanded. Council ships have the best defensive systems in the galaxy. Harrison smiled sadly. Had, Lieutenant. Past tense. Every system you consider advanced, we learned to defeat decades ago. Your shields, your weapons, your sensors, your engines, we know them better than you do. The displays show detailed schematics of Council technology, annotated with human analysis and countermeasures. Every weakness had been identified, every vulnerability catalogued. The aliens realized with growing horror that their most advanced military technology was essentially useless against human capabilities. The sector control failures were the most complex operation, Chen explained. We needed access to your central command networks, but they're heavily protected and constantly monitored. Impossible, Tylana protested. Sector control is isolated from all external networks. There's no way to access it remotely. You're right, Harrison agreed. So we didn't access it remotely. We physically infiltrated the station. The aliens stared at him in disbelief. Sector control was located in deep space, surrounded by defensive installations and staffed entirely by Council personnel. The idea that humans could have infiltrated it was beyond credibility. Shape-shifting technology, Kesara guessed. Nothing so exotic, Rodriguez replied. We simply recruited some of your people. The statement hit like a physical blow. Recruited? Turned. Convinced, persuaded? Call it what you want, Chen said. Some Council personnel have become sympathetic to human perspectives on galactic politics. Lyranis felt her worldview crumbling around her. You're talking about treason. We prefer to think of it as enlightenment, Harrison replied. When you show people the truth about council operations, some of them decide they'd rather be on the right side of history. The displays showed personnel files, council officers, scientists, and administrators who had been secretly working with humanity for years. The scope of the infiltration network was breathtaking. Humans had assets in every major council facility, from research stations to military commands to administrative centers. How many? Tilana asked weakly. Enough, Chen replied. We've been very careful about recruitment. We only approach people who are already questioning council policies, who have seen too much to maintain their faith in the system. People like Dr. Velnara, Rodriguez added casually. Kesara's scales went white with shock. Velnara is Admiral Zixara's communications officer. She processed our mission orders. Yes, Harrison confirmed. She's been working with us for 8 years. How? Do you think we knew exactly what kind of survey team would be sent to Earth? The implications were devastating. Their entire mission had been compromised from the beginning. The humans had known they were coming, known their capabilities, known their objectives. They had been walking into a carefully prepared trap from the moment they left council space. Dr. Velnara provided us with your personnel files, your mission parameters, and your ship's technical specifications, Chen explained. We've had months to prepare for this encounter. But why? Lyranis asked desperately. What could possibly motivate a council officer to commit treason? Truth, Harrison replied simply. We showed her the real history of council operations. The species that were eliminated not for being dangerous but for being inconvenient. The civilizations that were absorbed not to help them, but to exploit their resources. He activated another display, showing classified council documents that should have been accessible only to the highest levels of government. Elimination orders, resource extraction plans, population control protocols. The dark side of galactic civilization laid bare. Once you understand what the council really is, Rodriguez continued, once you see past the propaganda about galactic peace and cooperation, some people find their consciences won't let them participate anymore. The 3 aliens sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what they had learned. Their civilization, their government, their entire understanding of galactic society had been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. So what happens now? Kesara asked eventually. Now you have a choice, Chen replied. You can return to the council and file a standard report recommending humanity for integration protocols, in which case, we'll continue to play the role of primitive aliens while secretly preparing for the inevitable betrayal. Or, Lyranis prompted. Or you can help us change things, Harrison answered. Help us build a galaxy where civilizations don't have to choose between submission and destruction. The silence in the conference room stretched for what felt like an eternity. Lyranis struggled to process everything she had learned, her diplomatic training warring with the growing realization that every assumption about this mission had been wrong. The humans waited patiently, their expressions calm but alert. You're asking us to believe, Tilana said slowly, her cranium pulsing with neural activity, that your entire species has been living a lie for 50 years, that everything we observed from orbit was deliberately falsified. Not falsified, Dr. Harrison corrected, carefully curated. We showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. Primitive transportation that runs on fossil fuels, divided nations squabbling over resources, technology that appears decades behind galactic standards. But why? Kesara demanded. Why go to such elaborate lengths to appear weak? General Rodriguez smiled grimly. Because, Lieutenant, we studied your history. We know what happens to species that appear too advanced too quickly. The Council has a pattern of preemptive action against potential threats. Secretary Chen activated a holographic display that showed a timeline spanning thousands of years. Dozens of species were marked with various symbols, some still thriving, others marked with the red indicators that meant extinction or absorption. The hegemony wars weren't started by hostile aliens, Chen explained. They were started by the Council when they decided that certain species were developing too quickly. The purge of Sector 7 eliminated 3 civilizations that had achieved quantum manipulation without Council approval. Loranes felt sick as she recognized the historical events. Those were defensive actions. Those species were threatening galactic stability. According to Council records, Harrison replied, but we found survivor testimony. We know what really happened. The display zoomed in on one particular species, the keepers of Arcturus Prime. The aliens recognized them immediately. Ancient history called them an aggressive expansionist empire that had to be stopped before they could threaten the galaxy. The keepers never left their home system, Chen continued. They were a peaceful research civilization that had developed technology the Council wanted but couldn't understand. When they refused to share their knowledge, they were declared a threat to galactic peace. Images flashed across the display, not the propaganda versions from Council histories, but original records intercepted from hidden databases. The truth was devastating. The Keepers had been defending themselves against Council aggression. Not launching attacks, we realized, Rodriguez said quietly, that the galaxy's greatest threat wasn't hostile aliens or cosmic disasters. It was the organization that claimed to protect everyone from those threats. Kasara's scales were cycling through colors that indicated deep emotional distress. Even if what you're saying is true, what does that have to do with us? We're just a survey team. You're intelligence operatives, Chen corrected, and you're very good at your jobs, too good. We've been monitoring your analysis patterns throughout this meeting. You've been cataloging our weaknesses, measuring our capabilities, and planning contingencies for both exploitation and elimination. The accuracy of the statement was terrifying. All 3 aliens had indeed been conducting continuous threat assessments, cultural analysis, and resource evaluation. It was so ingrained in their training that they had been doing it subconsciously. But here's the thing, Harrison continued. You've been analyzing the wrong data set. The conference room suddenly changed. What had appeared to be a simple military facility was revealed as something far more sophisticated. The walls themselves were displays showing real-time data from across human space. The aliens realized they were sitting inside a command center that coordinated activities across dozens of star systems. Everything you've seen so far has been preliminary, Rodriguez explained. The orbital defenses, the quantum weapons, the fleet positions. That's just our local defensive capability. What you haven't seen is what we've been building while you've been watching. New displays activated, showing construction projects that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about engineering. Massive structures in deep space. Installations that seemed to bend reality around themselves. Networks of connected facilities that spanned light years. We call it the defense grid, Chen said. 47 years of continuous construction, hidden in the spaces between Council patrol routes. If we wanted to, we could shut down faster-than-light travel throughout this entire galactic region. Tylana's analytical mind was approaching overload. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of multiple stars. Only if you use traditional methods, Harrison replied. We don't harvest energy, we redirect it. Every star in this region is already producing more power than we could ever need. We just had to learn how to access it. The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe itself. And they had done it all while maintaining the illusion of being a primitive species. Why are you telling us this? Lyranus asked desperately. If you wanted to remain hidden, revealing everything to Council representatives seems counterproductive. Because hiding is no longer an option, Chen replied. Our intelligence networks have detected Council preparations for something called the Final Assessment Protocol. Are you familiar with it? The 3 aliens exchanged looks of pure terror. The Final Assessment Protocol was classified at the highest levels of Council security. It was the contingency plan for dealing with species that might pose an existential threat to galactic civilization. How do you know about that? Kasara whispered. Because we've been inside your communications networks for decades, Rodriguez answered. We know about the deep space monitoring stations, the automated elimination systems, the planet killer weapons held in reserve for ultimate emergencies. We know, Harrison continued, that if this mission reports back that humans are a potential threat, the Final Assessment Protocol will be activated within a solar cycle. The final assessment was exactly what it sounded like, a comprehensive evaluation of a species' threat potential, followed by immediate action to neutralize that threat. No negotiation, no second chances, no appeals process. It was the Council's ultimate solution to the problem of dangerous civilizations. But we also know, Chen added, that the protocol assumes the target species will be caught off guard. It relies on technological superiority and the element of surprise. She gestured to the displays showing human defensive preparations. We've spent 50 years making sure that neither of those advantages would be decisive. The aliens were beginning to understand the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't a primitive species that had gotten lucky with a few technological breakthroughs. This was a civilization that had anticipated every move the Council might make and prepared countermeasures decades in advance. "What do you want from us?" Lyranus asked again. "We want you to go back to the Council," Chen replied, "and deliver a very specific message. Tell them that humanity is aware of the final assessment protocol. Tell them that we've been preparing for it. And tell them that if they choose to proceed, they should be prepared for consequences they haven't anticipated." "You're threatening the Council?" Kesara asked incredulously. "We're offering them a choice," Rodriguez corrected. "They can accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs, or they can discover why every previous attempt to control human development has ended in failure." Previous attempts? Tilana's cranium was pulsing frantically. "Did you really think," Harrison asked gently, "that this was the first time the Council had noticed us?" The orbital defense demonstration began without fanfare. General Rodriguez simply touched a control panel, and through the facility's reinforced windows, the three Council officers watched humanity's true capabilities unfold. What they had mistaken for communications satellites suddenly reconfigured themselves into weapon platforms. Industrial installations revealed concealed launch bays. Even civilian structures opened to expose defensive systems that made the aliens' advanced sensors scream warnings about energy signatures they couldn't properly classify. "Impressive camouflage," Kesara admitted grudgingly. "But surely you understand that our ship's shields can withstand anything your technology can produce." Dr. Harrison's expression was almost sympathetic. "Commander, with respect, your ship's shields are designed to stop conventional weapons. Energy beams, plasma charges, kinetic projectiles, all operating within the normal parameters of physics as the Council understands them." "And your weapons don't?" Tilana asked, her cranium pulsing with increasing anxiety. "Our weapons change the parameters," Rodriguez explained. "Watch your ship's status indicators, Commander." Lyranus activated her personal communicator, connecting to the ethereal dawn. "Bridge. Report status." The response came back immediately, tinged with confusion. "All systems normal, Commander. Wait. We're detecting some kind of scanning beam, but it's not showing up on any of our sensors." "That's because it's not actually scanning your ship," Harrison said gently. "It's scanning the space around your ship. We're mapping the quantum fields that your shields generate." On the main display screen, a three-dimensional model of their vessel appeared, surrounded by a complex web of energy patterns. The aliens watched in growing horror as human computers analyzed every aspect of their defensive systems in real time. "Once we understand the harmonic frequencies," Rodriguez continued, "we can generate weapons that exist in the spaces between your shield matrices. Not trying to break through, simply existing where your defenses aren't." The demonstration was clinical and terrifying. One by one, human weapon systems achieved targeting locks on their ship. Not approximate positions, but precise quantum coordinates that mapped exactly where their shields couldn't protect them. "Your ship is now effectively defenseless," Chen stated matter-of-factly, "and this is just a demonstration using our local defense grid. You should see what we've prepared for full-scale fleet engagements." Tilana's analytical mind was struggling to process the implications. How is any of this possible? Your species is barely 2 centuries out of pre-industrial development. "Time isn't the only factor in technological advancement," Harrison replied. "Necessity and creativity matter more. When you know that advanced civilizations might someday threaten your existence, you develop very focused research priorities." "Besides," Rodriguez added, "we had excellent teachers. 50 years of intercepted Council communications provided us with detailed specifications for most galactic technologies. All we had to do was figure out how to defeat them. The humans had been leading them through a carefully orchestrated revelation, each demonstration building on the last to create a complete picture of humanity's true capabilities. But Lyranus was beginning to realize that they hadn't seen everything yet. There's more, isn't there? She asked. Chen nodded. Much more. But before we proceed, we need to address the elephant in the room. Elephant. Kesara looked confused. Human expression, Chen explained. It means the obvious issue that everyone is avoiding discussing. In this case, the fact that you three aren't really diplomats. The statement hit the aliens like a physical blow, till Anna's cranium went completely dark as her analytical system shut down from shock. Kesara's scales shifted to combat colors automatically. Lyranus felt her Aquarian physiology flood with stress hormones. I'm sorry? Lyranus managed. Commander Lyranus graduated top of her class in xenopsychology and cultural manipulation. Harrison read from a data pad. Lieutenant Kesara, specialist in rapid threat assessment and elimination protocols. Ensign Anna, expert in technological analysis and system vulnerability detection. How do you know our service records? Kesara demanded. Because we've been monitoring council personnel files for decades, Rodriguez replied. We know exactly what kind of team gets sent for standard diplomatic surveys of primitive species. It's always a cultural analyst to identify weaknesses, a warrior to assess military threats, and a tech specialist to catalog anything useful. Chen stepped forward, her diplomatic mask finally dropping completely. You're not here to welcome us to the galactic community. You're here to determine whether we're valuable enough to exploit or dangerous enough to eliminate. The accusations hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everything the humans had revealed suddenly took on a different context. They hadn't been showing off their capabilities out of pride. They had been making a statement. That's not, Lyranus began, then stopped. Because it was true. The Council's first contact protocols were designed to assess new species for potential value and threat level. The diplomacy was secondary to intelligence gathering. Let me guess how this was supposed to work, Harrison continued. You spend a few days observing us, file a report confirming that we're harmless primitives, then recommend us for standard integration protocols. Cultural exchange programs that are actually indoctrination. Technology transfers that create dependency. Economic partnerships that favor council interests. And if we proved problematic, Rodriguez added, you'd recommend isolation or elimination before we could become a real threat. Tylana's cranium suddenly blazed with activity as her analytical mind reached a terrifying conclusion. You've done this before, to other species. Every single first contact mission follows the same pattern, Chen confirmed. We've analyzed hundreds of council operations. The only variation is how long it takes before you decide a species' fate. The humans had turned their intelligence gathering around completely. Instead of being observed, they had become the observers. Instead of being assessed, they had assessed their assessors. So what happens now? Kesara asked, her warrior instincts telling her that they were in mortal danger. Now we have an honest conversation, Chen replied, because despite everything I've just revealed, we don't actually want to fight the Council. War is expensive, destructive, and ultimately pointless. We just want you to understand that it wouldn't go the way you expect. She activated another display, this one showing star charts that made the aliens' blood run cold. Human ships, not the primitive vessels they had expected, but sleek predators that bore no resemblance to anything in their intelligence reports, were positioned throughout the local galactic region. We've been exploring for decades, Rodriguez explained, quietly, carefully, without announcing our presence. We've established listening posts, research stations, and forward bases in over 40 systems. Most of them are in sectors the Council considers secure. Impossible, Lyranus whispered. Our sensors would have detected any unauthorized ships. Your sensors detect what you expect to find, Harrison corrected. Human ships don't use the same propulsion systems as Council vessels. We don't generate the energy signatures your equipment is designed to identify. The final revelation was the most devastating of all. Not only were humans far more advanced than anyone suspected, but they had been operating in Council space for decades without being detected. They had been watching, learning, and preparing while the galaxy's most powerful civilization remained completely unaware of their presence. Your move, Commander, Chen said quietly. As Dr. Harrison activated the demonstration chamber, the 3 Council officers watched with polite but limited interest. The small organism in the enclosure appeared unremarkable, a simple cellular structure that pulsed gently under the laboratory lights. Tylana's enhanced analytical mind automatically began cataloging its basic properties. Watch carefully, Harrison said, his finger hovering over a control panel. We're going to subject this organism to conditions that would instantly kill any natural life form. The chamber filled with what the readouts indicated was pure radiation, levels that would be lethal to most known species within seconds. The organism not only survived but began to thrive, its cellular activity increasing dramatically. Interesting, Tilana admitted. Radiation resistance isn't uncommon, though your achievement is notable for such a young species. Harrison smiled, but it wasn't the pleased expression of someone receiving a compliment. It was something else entirely. That's just the beginning. Computer, initiate thermal stress test. The temperature in the chamber spiked to levels that would vaporize most metals. The organism adapted within moments, its structure shifting to accommodate the extreme heat. Before the aliens could comment, the temperature plummeted to near absolute zero. Again, adaptation was almost instantaneous. Kesara's scales began to shift color, a draconian stress response. How is this possible? Even our most advanced bioengineering couldn't achieve adaptation that rapid. The secret isn't in the engineering, Dr. Harrison explained, his tone becoming more serious. It's in understanding what life really wants to do. Life doesn't want to just survive, it wants to overcome. Every challenge makes it stronger. Every threat becomes an opportunity for improvement. Lyranis felt a cold current run through her Aquarian physiology. Doctor, are you suggesting that your species has weaponized evolution itself? Weaponized? Harrison looked genuinely puzzled. No, Commander. We've simply learned to work with natural processes instead of against them. This is basic biology where we come from. General Rodriguez stepped forward, his casual demeanor becoming more focused. Perhaps we should show them the other demonstration, Doctor. They moved to another section of the facility, where a large viewing window overlooked what appeared to be a testing range. In the distance, targets had been set up, various materials that the aliens recognized as Council standard defensive barriers. We understand that galactic technology is far superior to ours, Rodriguez said conversationally, so we've been working on ways to level the playing field, just in case we ever encountered hostile forces. A human soldier appeared at the far end of the range, carrying what looked like a primitive kinetic weapon. The aliens watched with detached curiosity as the soldier took aim at the first target, a barrier made of metasteel, one of the strongest defensive materials in the galaxy. The weapon fired with a simple mechanical sound. The metasteel barrier didn't just break. It disintegrated completely, leaving nothing but scattered atoms drifting in the wind. Tilana's cranium began pulsing rapidly, her analytical mind racing. That's impossible. Kinetic weapons can't generate that kind of destructive force. You're right, Rodriguez agreed. Kinetic weapons can't. But kinetic weapons aren't what we use anymore. The soldier fired again, this time at a barrier made of crystallized energy, a defensive technology that could stop starship weapons. The result was identical. Complete molecular dissolution. What we've discovered, Dr. Harrison continued, is that every defensive system has an inherent weakness. Every barrier can be bypassed if you understand the fundamental forces involved. It's not about hitting harder, it's about hitting smarter. Kesara's warrior instincts were screaming warnings. What exactly are you shooting at those barriers? Modified matter, Rodriguez replied. We've learned to alter the basic properties of projectiles at the quantum level. Instead of trying to break through defenses, we simply make the projectiles exist in a state where the defenses can't interact with them. The implications hit Lyranis like a physical blow. You've developed quantum manipulation technology? But that's impossible. Your species hasn't even mastered fusion power. We haven't mastered fusion power because we didn't need to, Harrison explained. Why build massive power plants when you can manipulate matter at the subatomic level? It's much more efficient. Secretary Chen had been watching the aliens' reactions carefully. Now she spoke with a tone that had shifted from diplomatic courtesy to something much more serious. Commanders, we need to be honest with each other. When we detected your ship approaching our system, we weren't celebrating. We were preparing. Preparing for what? Lyranis asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. For war, Chen replied simply. We've been monitoring galactic communications for longer than you realize. We know about the Council's policies regarding problematic species. We know what happens to civilizations that don't conform to your standards. Tilana's analytical mind was processing information at maximum capacity. You've been intercepting our communications, but that requires technology far beyond your supposed capabilities. Our supposed capabilities, Rodriguez repeated. Based on what intelligence? Surface observations? Passive scans? Did any of your people actually come down to our planet before filing those reports? The uncomfortable truth was becoming clear. The Council's intelligence gathering had been entirely passive, conducted from orbit using standard sensors. They had observed human technology and society from a distance, making assumptions based on what they could detect remotely. You've been hiding your true capabilities, Cassara stated, her warrior's mind finally grasping the situation. Not hiding, Chen corrected, simply not advertising. We learned long ago that the galaxy isn't as peaceful as your propaganda suggests. We know about the hegemony wars, the purge of Sector 7, the fate of the Resistance Coalition. We know what the Council does to species that pose potential threats. Lyranis felt her diplomatic training crumbling around her. Those were isolated incidents. The species involved were genuinely dangerous to galactic peace. According to Council records, Harrison said, but we've also intercepted communications from survivor populations. The stories they tell are quite different from your official histories. The aliens found themselves in a situation that none of their training had prepared them for. They were alone on a planet they had assumed was primitive, surrounded by a species that was revealing capabilities far beyond anything in their intelligence reports. What do you want from us? Lyranis asked, her diplomatic composure finally cracking. The same thing we've always wanted, Chen replied, to be left alone to develop as we choose. But if that's not possible, then we want the Council to understand exactly what kind of mistake they would be making if they decided we were a problem to be solved. Rodriguez walked to another control panel. Would you like to see our orbital defense demonstration? We have some very interesting ideas about how to deal with ships that might try to quarantine our system. Through the facility's windows, they could see human installations that they now realized weren't primitive at all. What they had mistaken for basic industrial complexes were actually sophisticated military facilities, carefully disguised to appear harmless to orbital observation. How long have you been preparing for this? Tilana asked. Since we first detected your listening posts at the edge of our system, Chen answered, about 50 years ago. The aliens realized with growing horror that humanity had known about the galactic community for decades. They had been watching, learning, and preparing while allowing the Council to believe they were an ignorant primitive species. The airlock hissed open, and Lyranis stepped onto the alien soil with practiced grace. Her Aquarian physiology adapted instantly to the new atmospheric pressure, while her diplomatic training kicked in automatically. Behind her, Cassara and Tilana emerged with equal composure, their various scanning devices already cataloging everything from soil composition to electromagnetic radiation levels. The human delegation approached cautiously. 3 individuals in what appeared to be formal attire, flanked by soldiers in primitive armor carrying kinetic weapons. Lyranis almost smiled at the display, as if their crude projectile weapons could even scratch Council standard personal shields. The lead human was a tall female with graying hair pulled back severely. Her posture radiated authority despite her species' obvious physical limitations. I am Secretary of Defense Patricia Chen, she announced. On behalf of the United Nations, I welcome you to Earth. Lyranis activated her universal translator and responded with the standard diplomatic greeting. Greetings, Secretary Chen. I am Commander Lyranis of the Galactic Council. We come in peace to establish formal relations between your species and the galactic community. The humans exchanged glances that Tilana's enhanced analytical mind immediately flagged as significant. There was something in their micro-expressions, a tension that didn't match their words, but the Cerebrian dismissed it as natural nervousness. First contact was undoubtedly the most significant event in human history. We've prepared a facility for our discussions, Chen said, gesturing toward a low building in the distance. If you would accompany us. As they walked, Lyranis found herself studying the humans more closely. Their leader moved with surprising efficiency despite her primitive physiology. The soldiers maintained perfect formation while constantly scanning their surroundings. Their alertness level seemed excessive for what should have been a historic celebration. Tell me, Secretary Chen, Lyranis said, making conversation as they approached the building, what does your species hope to gain from contact with the galactic community? Chen's response was immediate and unsettling. knowledge, technology, and most importantly, an understanding of what threats we might face. Kesara's scales rippled with confusion. Threats? The galaxy is a peaceful place, Secretary Chen. The Council maintains order and ensures that conflicts between species are resolved diplomatically. Of course, Chen replied, but her tone carried an edge that the Draconian couldn't quite interpret. We've learned to be prepared for various possibilities. Inside the facility, the humans had arranged a conference room with remarkable attention to detail. The furniture was adjusted to accommodate the aliens' different physiologies. The lighting was calibrated to their visual spectrums, and the temperature was set to optimal comfort levels for all three species represented. Impressive adaptability, Tailana admitted privately through their shared communication link. They've done this preparation remarkably quickly. What she didn't realize was that humans had been preparing for this moment for much longer than she imagined. The formal discussions began with standard protocol exchanges. The humans presented their planet's governmental structure, population statistics, and technological capabilities with remarkable honesty. They seemed almost eager to emphasize their limitations and primitive status. We realize we have much to learn, Chen said as she concluded her presentation. Our technology is clearly far behind galactic standards. We're not even united as a species. We still have competing nations and occasional conflicts. Lyranus nodded approvingly. Honesty about limitations is a positive trait, Secretary Chen. Many species attempt to exaggerate their capabilities during first contact. Your humility will serve you well in joining the galactic community. May I ask about the process? Dr. James Harrison, the team's chief scientist, leaned forward with apparent curiosity. How does a species typically integrate with the Council? What are the requirements? Tailana took this question, her cranium pulsing with the pleasure of sharing knowledge. Integration is gradual, she explained. First, we establish a cultural exchange program. Then comes technology transfer, carefully managed to prevent cultural shock. Eventually, your species may qualify for Council membership, though that typically takes several centuries. Technology transfer, Dr. Harrison repeated thoughtfully. That's fascinating. What determines how much technology a species receives? Primarily their ability to use it responsibly, Kesara interjected. Species that demonstrate wisdom and peaceful intentions receive more advanced systems. Those that show aggressive tendencies are limited to basic improvements. The third human, General Marcus Rodriguez, had been silent throughout most of the exchange. Now he spoke for the first time. And if a species proves to be problematic? What then? The question sent a chill through the alien delegation that none of them could quite explain. Lyranus found herself reassessing the human before her. His posture was relaxed, his tone conversational, but something in his eyes suggested depths that hadn't been apparent in their intelligence reports. Such cases are rare, Lyranus replied carefully. Most species naturally develop peaceful tendencies as they advance. Those that don't are simply isolated until they mature. Isolated how? Rodriguez pressed. Trade restrictions, communication limits, sometimes quarantine fields around their system, Tailana answered. Nothing harmful, simply containment until they're ready to join civilized society. The humans absorbed this information with what appeared to be casual interest, but all three aliens were beginning to feel increasingly uncomfortable. There was something happening beneath the surface of this conversation, currents they couldn't read. Dr. Harrison consulted a device that looked remarkably advanced for human technology. I hope you don't mind, but we've prepared some demonstrations of our capabilities. Nothing threatening, of course, just examples of what we've achieved. Certainly, Lyranus agreed, though she wondered what primitive humans could possibly demonstrate that would be of interest to Council representatives. The first demonstration was in the adjacent laboratory. Harrison led them to a transparent enclosure containing what appeared to be a small biological sample. We've been working on genetic adaptation, he explained. This organism has been modified to survive in environments that would normally be lethal. The Galactic Council's newest intelligence report landed on Admiral Zixara's desk with the soft thud of disappointment. The blue-skinned Valorian officer's four eyes scanned the holographic display, her tentacle-like fingers drumming against the crystalline surface. Another primitive species discovered on the outer rim of the galaxy, the third this cycle. Humans, she muttered. the universal translator struggling with the alien phonetics. The species designation appeared harmless enough. Bipedal mammals from a small blue-green world they called Earth. Their technology was, laughably primitive. They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel and still used combustion engines for local transportation. Most amusing of all, they were divided into hundreds of separate nations, constantly bickering over resources and territory. The report classified them as Category 7, minimal threat, the lowest possible rating. Even the peaceful Herberan monks rated a Category 5 due to their advanced psychic abilities. These humans had no notable physical advantages, no psychic powers, no advanced weaponry that could threaten even a single Council patrol ship. They were, by all accounts, completely harmless. Zixara's communications officer, a tall, elegant Stellarian named Vel Nara, approached the command platform. Her silver skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that indicated curiosity. "Admiral, the Council has approved first contact protocols for the human species. They've requested a standard diplomatic survey." "A waste of resources," Zixara replied, but she nodded anyway. "Very well. Assemble a small team, just enough to satisfy Council requirements. Take the science vessel Ethereal Dawn. This shouldn't require more than a few solar cycles." The diplomatic team consisted of 3 young officers, all recent graduates from the Council Academy. It was considered a safe assignment, perfect for inexperienced diplomats to cut their teeth on a harmless species. Commander Lyranis, a petite Aquarian with flowing translucent skin, led the mission. Her expertise lay in cultural analysis and first contact protocols. Accompanying her were Lieutenant Kesara, a fierce-looking draconian warrior whose red scales marked her as a member of the elite Guardian class, and Ensign Tilana, a brilliant young Cerebrian whose enlarged cranium housed one of the most advanced analytical minds in the Council. As their ship approached the Sol system, the team reviewed their mission parameters with casual disinterest. Standard first contact procedure: observe from orbit, establish communication, assess technological and cultural development, file report. Simple, routine, boring. "Look at them," Tilana said, her pale blue skin flickering with neural activity as she processed the incoming data streams. "They're actually fighting wars on their own planet. Multiple conflicts simultaneously. How inefficient." Kesara snorted, a small puff of steam escaping her nostrils. "Primitive territorial behavior. My people abandoned such foolishness millennia ago when we learned to share hunting grounds." Lyranis studied the human settlements spreading across the planet's surface like an infection. They've overpopulated their world and depleted many of their natural resources, yet they continue to reproduce at unsustainable rates. Most species develop population controls before reaching critical mass. The 3 young officers exchanged knowing looks. This assignment was clearly beneath their training. They had studied advanced civilizations, learned protocols for dealing with species that could challenge Council authority or contribute valuable knowledge to the galactic community. These humans appeared to offer nothing but a footnote in some xenobiologist's research database. Their ship, a sleek diplomatic vessel equipped with the latest stealth technology, settled into a stable orbit around Earth. The humans' primitive sensors couldn't detect them. Their radar systems were centuries behind Council standard. The team could observe with complete impunity, gathering data for their report while remaining invisible to the subjects below. "Initial scans complete," Tilana announced, confirming Category 7 classification. "No energy weapons capable of threatening our shields, no spacecraft that could pursue us beyond their immediate solar system, no evidence of advanced materials science or quantum technology." Kesara activated the cultural analysis protocols, tapping into human communication networks. The sheer volume of their information systems was impressive, but the content made her scales ripple with amusement. "They spend enormous amounts of time creating fictional entertainment about alien invasions," she reported. "Most scenarios involve the aliens being defeated by human ingenuity and determination. Quite optimistic for such a primitive species. Compensation behavior," Lyranis diagnosed. "They subconsciously understand their vulnerability, so they create fantasies where they emerge victorious against superior forces. It's actually quite common among developing civilizations." The team spent several cycles observing human behavior patterns, military capabilities, and technological development. Everything confirmed their initial assessment. Humans were individually weak. Their physical strength was average compared to most sapient species. Their lifespans were brief, and they had no natural abilities that would make them formidable opponents. Their technology was crude, their society fractured, their potential for advancement limited by their own aggressive tendencies. On the 5th day of observation, Lyranus made the decision to proceed with direct contact. Standard protocols called for announcing their presence through official government channels, but the humans had dozens of competing power structures. She chose the largest military alliance, transmitting a basic greeting through their communication satellites. The response was immediate and chaotic. Human military forces went to maximum alert, their primitive weapon systems activated, and their leaders engaged in frantic communications. The reaction was so overblown that Tilana's cranium actually pulsed with laughter. They think 3 young officers in a single diplomatic vessel constitute an invasion force, she gasped. Their paranoia levels are off the charts. Kesara watched human military units scrambling across the planet's surface like disturbed insects. Should we be concerned about this level of aggression? She asked. They're behaving as if we pose an actual threat. Lyranus considered this briefly, then dismissed the concern. Fear response to the unknown. Perfectly normal for a species that hasn't encountered other sapient life. Once we establish communication and they understand we mean no harm, they'll calm down. The team prepared for the next phase of contact, a face-to-face meeting with human representatives. They selected a remote location away from major population centers to minimize the risk of cultural contamination. The humans had designated a military facility in what they called Nevada as the meeting point. As their shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, the 3 young officers felt confident and relaxed. This was, after all, just another routine first contact mission with a harmless primitive species. They had followed all protocols, taken every precaution, and prepared for every contingency their training had covered. What they hadn't prepared for was discovering that everything the Galactic Council thought it knew about humans was completely wrong. The shuttle touched down on the desert floor with barely a whisper, its advanced landing systems compensating automatically for the planet's gravity and atmospheric conditions. Through the viewports they could see human vehicles approaching, crude wheeled conveyances that kicked up clouds of dust as they moved. Ready to meet our new galactic neighbors? Lyranus asked, her voice carrying the casual confidence of someone who had never encountered a species that could surprise her.